Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Mortis FM, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Grayson, one of your hosts.
I'm Cole, the other host, Grace, and we're talking about the finale of The Acolyte today.
You don't know what it's called?
It's just called The Acolyte, right?
Yeah. I looked it up because I was like, when I clicked on it last night, it was like right when it dropped, so it just said episode 8, watch the episode now, like in the
description.
Me too. Yeah.
And for a second, I honestly, when I saw that, I was like, thank God, because I don't like seeing little still images, although I still saw one at the front page of Disney Plus where you see Osha. Yeah. And I was like, man, because like even just a still image technically counts as a spoiler. That's why half of me doesn't like watching trailers these days, because I expect certain scenes and I'm oh, well, they're still alive because I haven't seen this scene yet. I'm too smart for my own good.
It's the same thing happened with Ahsoka and this, where we're like, well, we haven't gotten that scene yet in the trailer, so we know that's going to happen at some point.
Right. Exactly.
You're like ticking the boxes. Yeah, for mine, for some reason, it still had Indara from last week, and then when I went to the episode list, it was like a grayed out image. There wasn't an image, and then it was just like, description, watch the episode now. I was like, all right, I will. Geez, like.
well, for me, the image of the episode on the episode list was just the banner for the Acolyte.
Oh wait, no, yeah, you're right. It was that for me. Yeah, it was like the 3 characters or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have shared no thoughts with one another, and I've been not talking to a lot of people, just like simmering on a lot. So, Cole, what did you think of the finale of The Acolyte?
We're back.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's like it's the meme of like, it's so over, we're so back kind of thing. Overall, I walked away from that going, all right. You know, like I wasn't angry. I wasn't frustrated or anything like that. Like there's a couple things that I was like, okay, you know, but I think overall, I'm still very pleased with the quality of the season and then that episode. So yeah, I mean, 100% cliffhanger. So I'm, you know, I'm assuming season 2 or whatever. I really thought that it was just going to be wrapped up in a neat little bow and that was it. But we all knew that there was way too much or way too little, you know, to finish that with, I think. But I liked the episode. I think that the performances were great. I think that there were some revelations there that I didn't expect. And I got a really nice birthday present from the episode.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Because it dropped yesterday on your birthday. Yeah, which a lot of people sent you birthday wishes. I have not got to express this, but people DM'd the Mortis account or commented or sent you DMs.
DM Mortis account. Yeah, but I got some DMs. So thank you to everyone who wished me happy birthday. Even Star Wars wished me a happy birthday by giving me something very nice in the Acolyte episode, which we'll get to. But yeah, overall thoughts, it was good stuff. What about you?
This episode left me feeling very mixed. I want to say more positive than negative. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not inherently like negative. Someone asked last night, they were like, what are our thoughts? And it was just someone else on the side. And I was just like, I'm just kind of left like, there's things I liked and things I was not super savvy about. And the episode itself, I enjoyed. I think I guess going to like the cliffhanger thing is there's a lot of stuff that's left unresolved very much intentionally. And my worry is that with the way this show has been received, which I am not putting myself in that lump of like, I enjoyed this show more than I didn't enjoy things. Like for the most part, I think I will look back on this show pretty fondly, but my worry is that we will not get those answers and that a season 2 will not happen. And I think that will harm, like, I swear I had heard that they were like, you know, season 1, if it's just one season, we haven't heard about a season 2 yet, like it will feel self-contained. And I was like, in a way it does, but it definitely sets up a lot. Like even down to like the last shot being like let's talk or whatever, and you're like, okay, we got like, because I was talking to my dad. I was talking to him about Ahsoka last night. We're comparing it that, and it's like Ahsoka, I think, yes, it left room for a season 2, but I think it felt like it closed a lot more plot lines than anything, and it was also less of a toss-up of whether we were gonna get a season 2. So like the unresolved plot lines of like Baylan and Ahsoka and Sabine of like, okay, well, if we don't get those storylines, it's not the end of the world, but like we probably will. And it's probably like at this point, like we probably will get a season 2, which was unexpected. Whereas this, I'm just kind of like, is this something they'll move forward with? I mean, I hope.
So I think with the Ahsoka, because like Ahsoka season 2 is greenlit, we do know that. It's either in pre-production or just in production in general. But I think with that, it's like, the questions that we had about the show before watching the show have pretty much been answered. And so now it's like, I see what you're saying, where like it would be more okay with leaving that off because it's kind of new questions that are being left to the ether. But with the Acolyte, as much as I, in retrospect after the show is done, as much as I enjoyed the show, the questions that we had coming in are still not answered. At least like pretty much like it's these things were introduced to us and now we still don't know. And so this is very much like we need a season 2 from this in order for it to be kind of a cohesively told story. Because now, just have more questions on top of the questions that we already have. I think there's a lot left to be desired still. And there were questions that I thought that we were going to get answered that just weren't, which tells me that the story, this was intentionally written to have a season 2. So I hope that it's greenlit. I really do. I hope that they look at the actual critic scores and stuff like that to determine on whether or not it's actually good. Because I mean, I really hope that Lucasfilm and Disney execs wisen up to the idea that people will review bomb things to make it look bad. Like, how could there have been so many dislikes on a trailer, and then compare it to the watch time and, with the show not even being out, kind of thing.
Yeah, like there was episodes that were getting bombed before they had even dropped,
Exactly. So it's kind of hard to sift through that, but I'm hoping that the people in those kinds of roles are like, all right, so I think actual Star Wars fans enjoy this pretty enough to continue it. It's good quality sort of thing. So yeah, we'll have to see about that. If it's not continued and it's not answered for like another several years, I'm going to be very miffed. But
I mean, if a season 2 happens, I truly don't. Well, I don't see it happening until definitely after the Mando movie, definitely after Ahsoka season 2, and probably the Rey movie as well. It might come out before the Rey movie. I don't know. It really just depends on how fast they greenlight it. Continuing to a little bit like, and I'll get into specific moments, and I'm sure you will as well. But like, if they do a season 2, I am open to that. I would look forward to that. There's just things that I do. Really, the biggest critiques for me have been, I think, for this show, the certain character choices and pacing / editing choices are really, really where there were so many times, at least in the most recent 2 episodes, we expressed a lot of our critiques with episode 7. Even with this one, not as much, but still with this one, there were moments where I was like, why is that person doing that? I don't understand. What is happening? Like there were points where I literally was like, what? Huh? Yeah. What just happened? And I'm someone who I will go back and I will like analyze things with a different lens. Like even when it comes down to like books and stuff, I'll be like, all right, let me make sure this isn't a me thing, right? Like, let me make sure like I'm getting all this right. I didn't miss something or whatever. And there was a couple moments where I was just like, why did they do that? And that's my big critique with the show is just like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, like I get why the story necessitates that, and I like that decision, but I don't feel like it was built up enough for them to make that decision.
It was executed in a weird way.
Right.
Like maybe one more episode
yeah.
to kind of like space out decisions or explain things a little bit more.
Yeah.
Probably would have been good.
Yeah. And I'll get into those moments, and they're not like moments where I'm like, oh my God! Like, you know, again, that's that thing that we make very clear where it's like, you know, we're not really like that. But I was just sitting there like certain moments last night and being like, I told my dad, I was like, there'll be like a couple moments where I'm like, that's dope. And then a moment will happen and I'm like, what? I'm like, why did that happen? You know? Yeah. And then it'll go back to be like, that's dope. And so like, that's why I say like, there's a lot more that I enjoyed than I was like, just kind of like, okay. And so it's like, yeah, so I guess we should just get into the, like, I'm not going to do the, like we've done with this show thus far. It was easier to do with Bad Batch. We're not going to do it here, but like we'll get into kind of like the plot, the nitty gritty.
Main potatoes.
Yeah. Why don't you pick the first thing you want to talk about? Because I have a couple things that I would like to address. But if there's something like off the cuff that you want to talk about, maybe the big thing in the episode, if you want to talk about it.
It's almost, that kind of feels like a dessert though.
It does, like yeah.
I kind of want to leave that for a little bit. Whoever's seen the episode, you already know what we're talking about. Okay, let's see. So, yeah, let's start off with an appetizer.
Okay.
Did you also feel a little bit weird with Basil ripping up Soul's ship?
Okay, that was the first thing I was gonna bring up. So we're on the same page. Basil doesn't make sense to me. Like
what's his goal?
Yeah,
what's his goal?
Like, it's like, what's he doing, man? So he's that moment. If I had to pick one thing in the entire episode, that's the moment that I went, and I literally that was the last thing that I rewatched right before recording this, and I remember I was just going, what is he doing? I was like, because I think I've broken it down, but it kind of comes down to the show of not making things at least not explicitly clear. We're like, this is what's happening, but like it doesn't make that sort of thing clear. So if you look at Basil, he was a civilian working with the Jedi. He's a tracker. Okay. Yeah. So he's on the side of the Jedi. He seems like he has been on the side of the Jedi for almost the entire time. He gets stuck after the whole events episode 5. He's still around. He gets back on the ship, whatever. It seems as if in episode 6, when Soul detains May, that it was Basil who kind of made that clear. Like Basil is like right behind Soul, and Soul, stuns her, and Basil's right there. And Basil does not speak English. We cannot understand what he is saying. So I was like, okay, I guess Basil was like, that's May, or at least, I mean, May was talking to the comms, but I was like, okay, so he's still on, like, he was also antagonistic to May. So I was like, okay, so he's still on Soul's side. He's still running around, like, they're not really, like, he's just kind of doing his little thing. And then in this episode, they go to Brendok, and then Soul is chasing May through the little asteroid field, the ring. And I'm like, okay. And it also that moment, I'm not clear what Soul is trying to do, because I was like, it's on like a targeting computer, but it's he's like right next to her, Well,
I'm pretty sure, like, because the way that ship works is like, it's like detached into 3. So I think he was trying to like forcefully reconnect it.
Okay.
Like, which is why it was like he was like trying to ram into her basically, because her ship detached from his ship, which detached from the big ship.
Yeah,
okay. But then, like, you would think that since Basil was, like, privy to May not being Osha, and that he seemed to clearly be on the Jedi side, you'd think that he would be okay with this.
Yeah.
But he rips up, like, Soul is literally about to get May, and then he rips up all of the wires, which causes them both to crash.
Yeah, like the ship, like the signal thing, like a red thing comes off, and then, like, Soul's like, and like the ship like completely like turns, and then but
there's no explanation why. It doesn't tell us why he did that, because I was like, dude, whose side are you on? And I just had a crazy thought.
Okay.
unless there is an ulterior motive. What if it's like revealed in like season 2 that Basil is like a little secret agent for a certain someone?
For who? For the reveal of the episode?
Yeah.
No way, dude.
I think it would be so stupid, but it would also be, it would kind of fall into the Darth Jar Jar area of theory, you know? Because what does Basil want? There has to be some reason as to why the show doesn't explain his motives other than pure, you know.
But okay, here's my thought. This was what I think I worked out, and it still isn't a perfect theory. I love how we're theory crafting about Basil right now.
Already.
So he was obviously buddies with Yord, and and then later on in this episode, he is helping the remaining Jedi track May. Track them to the tree. He's like that big new group of Jedi, right? The D-listers or whatever. And so he's still clearly on the side of the Jedi, and I'm like, Sol did turn off the transponder in episode 6 and then went to Brendok. So I'm like, is Basil doing this to try to stop them so that the Jedi can get there in time? Does he think Sol has gone rogue, maybe? And
he's friends with that group of Jedi.
Right.
You know? Like, they recognize and they're like, oh, Basil, you know?
Right.
So
I just
straight up typed up why did Basil, and it just says disable Sol's ship. And there's a Reddit post where someone said, and it's like, you know, They posted in r/the Acolyte. They're like asking the same thing, and the top comment says Basil Tenebrous up to his old tricks. Someone says Basil is clearly close with Venestra's number 2 guy. His name's Mog.
Mog, yeah.
He's Moggin.
Dude, every time I see that, I was like, why did they name him that? You know?
And it says he's clearly close with her number 2 guy, which makes me think he was following orders from them and crippling the ship. Basil is secretly a Sith Lord, Darth Plagueis. This person says Darth Basil. And then this person says, I think because Sol was about to kill her and Basil stopped him from committing another murder. And then someone says, was he trying to kill her? At first I thought so, but I thought maybe a tractor beam lock to return the ship is docking it. And then someone's like, Basil is the secret apprentice. And someone says Basil knew Sol was going too far and he wasn't with that S.
Okay.
And then someone says, I think we'll see in season 2 that Basil isn't as much of a friend of the Jedi as he seems. He clearly intentionally betrayed Sol in favor of May.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
I like the idea of the tractor beam. The tractor beam thing makes sense because he pulls up the targeting computer and then there's a switch. He's about to flip a switch, so maybe he disabled something on the ship. But I just don't get how.
Well, if Sol wanted to kill her, would have shot her down.
Right.
You know?
Right.
He wouldn't take himself into an asteroid field that his ship is not able to navigate because it's too big, and then try to ram into her. Like, he could have shot her right there. She would have immediately exploded. So no, he's not trying to kill her.
Yeah. I guess maybe Basil's trying to lock them down on the planet so that like they don't try to leave again. But like Sol wants the Jedi to come to Brendok.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with that, turning off the ship's or like ripping up the ship's controls haphazardly, no less, is no confirmation that they are going to 1, crash on the planet, and 2, crash on the planet safely.
Yeah.
So that was like a desperate move to disable those things. So I don't know. Maybe he was trying to prevent Sol from doing something stupid. Which let's be real, like docking mid like hyper like a fast paced flight, you know, is not advisable. That's definitely not Coruscanti regulation safe.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's got to be a reason here. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't answered. But if it was a Darth Jar Jar situation where like Basil actually straight up is just an op, like he's a secret agent, because let's be real, a certain someone has all sorts of agents around the galaxy, you know?
I mean, it's not the first time that also we've seen, not even Sith related, like seen like goofy characters actually be like something. And I feel like it's so theory crafty to be like, what if he's someone malicious? Because I'm like, I don't believe that in my heart, but maybe, like, as the famous Elijah Wood said in a Lord of the Rings
maybe
maybe.
I also don't believe it in my heart, but at the same time, I know that Star Wars has it is just the right amount of unorthodox for it to be something that could exist in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And given that we are having a lot of Phantom Menace-y symbolism there, having the unassuming kind of goofy character actually be something that very intentionally slips under everyone's noses, could very much be plausible. So I don't know.
It also gives, like, Basil gives the vibes of like I don't know if you've ever had this in your experience playing tabletop RPGs, but there's like those random NPCs or like player characters that kind of feel the need to, like, maybe they don't feel the need, but sometimes they just do things to be like in the moment of like, I guess I'll do this, you know, and they're just like, they're like, you know, they like, it was Basil's turn and they were like, what do you want to do? And it was like, I don't know, like, because he doesn't, maybe he thinks,
I rev up the controls.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you're like, all right, it just sends them haywire. I'm like, maybe that's, and I feel like I do that a lot now with Star Wars. I'm like, so maybe that's the case there. I don't know. I don't feel like we ever will get an answer, but it certainly, that was the one moment in the episode where I was just like,
I really hope that in the interviews, Leslie Headland is asked WTF about Basil, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, if you and I ever get that chance, let's hope, cross our fingers. That's the first thing I'm asking.
Like, yo, what's Basil's deal, man?
What the dog doing, you know? So that was, I'm glad we were on the same page about that, because when he started doing that, I was like, dude, well, I just thought to myself, what? You know?
Yeah.
Okay. So, then I had my turn. It's your turn now. You bring up something you want to talk about.
So, on that same vein, it kind of like right before that, and I think I figured this out. I was talking with Will of the Force. We were talking about some things because I wanted our discussion to be fresh. But I was talking to him trying to figure out why Soul in episode 6 he got May, or no, sorry, yeah, he did get May, knocked her out and was like, oh May, and then turned off the transponder. Because like the Jedi are like, leave your transponder on. He turns it off and then goes to Bryndock, and then it makes it seem like he's kind of going rogue, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think would make sense why Basil is doing what he's doing in episode 8. However, as soon as he gets to Bryndock, he turns the transponder back on. He's like, oh, I'm going to bring the Jedi here. He says that to May. And I'm like, okay, I guess he did that because he said that he wants to face the council. He wants to fess up to what he's done to the Jedi and what happened on Bryndock. So I guess it makes sense for him to leave Kofar and be like, you know what? Let's just go straight to the source. Let's go to Bryndock. Yeah. But initially on my first watch, I was like, why did he do that? I was like, but I think my train of thought makes sense on why he did end up changing his mind.
So what do you got?
That I think he was like, you know what? I'm turning off the transponder.
Yeah. I'm
gonna bring the Jedi to Bryndock, and I think originally he also wanted to tell. I got the impression that he wanted to tell the truth to May and Osha, but he never quite. It's
possible that like he wanted to make sure he had enough time to get that point across. Because like he was already in contact with the Jedi. They probably would have met him there by the time they got to Bryndock if he was telling them. And then by that time he wouldn't have any time, you know? So like turning it back on gives him enough time to just kind of do whatever it is that he needed to do. But to be fair, like Soul was kind of acting and feeling irrationally, you know?
That was what Will was saying to me, is like after episode 5, Soul is kind of acting, he's kind of acting out of turn. And initially, when watching these through the first time through, and I do plan on after this episode, not immediately, but through the next week, I'm going to rewatch the entire show from cover to cover because I want to see how that changes the viewing experience. But Soul was acting, like you said, irrationally. He was making some weird decisions and kind of changing his mind on certain things and whatnot. And that is one of those examples. And so I think when I rewatched a little portion of episode 6, there's a moment where he's like on the ship after everything that's happened and he's like kind of breaking down. And I forgot about that scene entirely. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, so he kind of is having a little bit of a breakdown moment where it's like things are not going. Yeah.
This is like the second time that things have gone poorly, you know, after the stranger wipes out the entire squadron other than Soul. Which, you know, I'm just going to say right off the bat, since it's in my mind, Soul's 2 for 2 on that score. Dude, I'll just say Chimera cannot best Soul in a fight. It's not happening. And like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and talk about that. That fight was so cool. Like round 2 was really, really great. I loved, I'm going to name specifically when when Chimera like puts up his saber like this and then takes the other one out. Like there was a lot of cool moves in that fight. Definitely, it kind of, I want to pair that with the episode 5, just kind of fight as like the fight choreographies in this show really great.
I'll be honest, I really do think it's the best choreography we've ever gotten in maybe the Disney era of Star Wars. It's really good, dude. Yeah,
I think that they absolutely went all out on that. I think it is just kind of, it really feels like lightsaber combat at its peak. It's not so flashy as to the point where it feels ridiculous, and it's not too slow as to the point where it feels ridiculous, I'll say again.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a great combination of OT and prequel and even sequel, you know, like I think sequel felt like the prototype of like this perfected lightsaber choreography, and now this is where it's at its peak.
It's like I think it really takes a good amount of the speed of the prequels and like in the kind of the finesse, and then the kind of more like the going for actual killing blows in the original trilogy,
like an actual raw fight,
right?
You know, they're fighting. That's the point. Yeah,
exactly. And then like the weight of the sequels, because I think a big criticism is like that the sabers feel really heavy in the sequels to like you know when they're swinging them around, and it's like it's not as much of the case in the original trilogy, maybe a little bit earlier on, but then in the prequels they're so fast, you know. And I really feel like it's that kind of triangle of like the speed, the weight, and the power of just like, and it just hits, man.
It's every move feels intentional. There's not there isn't like a random, you know, sideward like sideways flip Boba Fett style. Book of Boba Fett style. It really just feels like, okay, these are warriors at the top of their game trying to kill each other with their entire skill set. And anytime I see the stranger and Soul fight, Soul like constantly lays him out, but they're both like really great fights.
Dude,
I think that it's sick of matchups.
The moment when they're out in the courtyard and he has the 2 lightsabers and he like goes for the lunge where you can tell he's controlling the lightsabers with one hand. He's about to like punch him, and then literally Soul does the force repulse of just like, you know. I was like,
that was just such a great altercation there of Chimera doing this pincer move, and then Soul responding, you know, putting away his lightsaber and just, you know, doing this repulse, which is very Jedi.
Yeah. He did like 2 or 3 moments where he turned off his lightsaber to do something, and then he would reignite it again, and you're like, dude, that is cold, man.
Soul is a fantastic combatant, and so he's definitely up there as like one of my favorite lightsaber duelists, as well as Chimera. And I weirdly thought that seeing Chimera like lose against Soul for the second time would make me like Chimera less, because you love to see him, you know, kick ass, right? But I think it just made me like Soul more. You know, it didn't change how I felt about Kymir's character because I still think that he's really great. I think he was once again really good in this episode. They just stay winning with the villains every time.
Dude, yeah, I've got a take about Kymir later, but continue.
Yeah, but Soul, even with certain things that happened in this episode, I really his character was probably one of the highlights for me in this show.
Yeah.
I think that his actor did a phenomenal job, and I really believe that. Oh man, now I'm sad. I just thought about one of Soul's final lines, which if we want to go ahead and talk about that, we can.
Sure.
Soul is killed in this episode. Another moment where I was actually kind of sidelined with that decision because I didn't think that would be something that Osha would do.
Really good moment.
Yeah, the more that I've thought about it today, the more I feel all right with this decision because I think things are kind of coming full circle for me. See, like if you recall, both you, Grayson, and you, the viewer, I love you personally, if you recall, throughout this show, I have noted a couple times that both Osha and May make a lot of very impulsive decisions, and they're not, I'm not going to say like they aren't bright, but like Kymir literally says at the beginning of the episode, like Kymir says, you are different from your sister. May agreed to it without even thinking about it, And I thought to myself, well, Osha also said no without even thinking about it. So,
Yeah.
But regardless, that was a critique for me, was that it felt like they didn't think things through. But I think that's actually just a part of the character. I don't think that's bad writing because Osha kills Soul, chokes him to death, which is wild that she just used that move instinctively for the first time, I'm assuming. And I don't think she thought that through. I think that was a 100% impulsive decision because we are going the dark side route. There was the screen paused and you saw the light and the dark side choice, and she ended up choosing the dark side.
I mean, literally down to the raw emotion, because we know that she is like an emotional being. That down to literally she was like not even trying to, naturally bleeding the crystal in her hand.
So cool to see in live action.
Dude.
So cool. As soon as I saw like the tinge of red, I was like, oh, because like what's happening.
I like the way they do the crystal bleeding in this, because I've seen some complaints where people are like, don't you have to take it out of the saber, or don't you have to like, doesn't it look different or whatever? And I think the 3 times we've seen crystals being bled are Vader in the comic. I believe that's the very first time we ever see it, and it's like this big thing,
It's a ritual for sure. It's a Sith ritual.
Exactly, and it's like a lot more I guess flashy, and then Kylo does it, but it cracks, and then we see Dagon do it.
But it's like an intentional focus. But then we see it with Osha, where it is purely accidental, instinctive, and I think that's
quite
cool.
literally looks like blood going into the crystal, whereas other times it kind of looks like it's like changing form. This is like
it's like bleeding up the saber, which is I think that now calling it bleeding makes sense to me, because it's like the crystal fills with red and then it kind of pours out, which is what happens when you give in to unbridled emotions. It pours out of you, as if you yourself were gutted, because it's no longer something you can control. So I think that that's really great. I would love to see a live action version of Purifying One. I'm assuming it kind of works in a reverse way. Like it just kind of loses its color, goes back down, but that was very cool to see. And yeah, you were saying like Osha, very emotional when, in like a scene before when Osha and May were fist fighting, I was thinking to myself, they really switched roles here. Like May almost seemed like, well, May is the calmer one in this, the one that thinks a little bit through.
Even now that their clothing is swapped entirely, dark clothing and light clothing.
It feels very intentional. And then Osha is like screaming the entire time during her fight, like she's losing it, you know. And now with this concept of them not being sisters, they're actually just the same person. That swap makes more sense. And yet, I'm interested about this concept.
Yeah.
What do you mean that they're the same person? You know?
Because like they are sisters, like obviously, but it's like, but they didn't. That's one of the questions that I hope we get further explained, and I'm okay with that. That it's not fully explained. Of like, yeah. What do you mean? Like how? Right?
There was a little snippet of information that made us curious as well. That when they're repeating their rhyme, and Osha's like, who, or I think May says, "Who taught us that anyway?" And then Osha said, "I thought you made it up."
Yeah, you know? Like, I always thought you made it up.
And yeah, who did come up with that? I don't know. So I think that this is very interesting. I love, I guess I'll say vergences in the Force. Like I love these kinds of things. We've got the Dyad and Anakin being the chosen one, and so now cool. May and Osha. I think this is a really cool and fitting addition to this. And now with one of the reveals in this episode, I think what you and I were considering before is kind of on the money with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was cool. Soul. Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and say since we were talking about Soul before, right before Osha chokes Soul, she interrupts him saying, "I think he was going to say I love you."
I love you. Yeah.
And that makes me so sad.
Yeah.
Because like it was like genuine fatherly care.
Yeah.
You know, and he ends up dying for that, and it's not right. You know, like when he died, in the moment, instinctively, I was angry. I was angry at the show for killing him because I said to myself, this isn't right. He's not supposed to die for this. But that's the point. This is an unceremonious, wrong thing to do because Osha is following a dark path. This is not the right thing to do.
Yeah,
and the
honestly,
show knows that.
I've been referencing this moment internally, and maybe to Will. Maybe I brought it up once. I can't even remember, honestly, where I was talking about how one of my minor critiques was like, I wish that Soul had articulated a bit better about what happened. Yeah. And it still could have went down the same way. And I'm not like that mad about it, but like, I'm not mad about it at all. But I would have liked it to been like a thing of like, I thought she was going to kill May. I misunderstood. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You know, like I was just trying to protect you both.
Yeah.
And then it'd be a thing of like, what I was referencing was Captain America Civil War. We're having a moment where May is like, it doesn't matter. You killed my mother and you didn't tell me. Where it's like the same thing where it's like where Tony's like, I don't care. He killed my mom. You know.
Yeah.
And because that's the how the switch works, right? Is because May has had 16 years to process that Soul has killed her mother, right? And now she gets a little bit of time where he feels remorseful, like he wishes he didn't. He does express that in episode 6 and in episode 8. But Osha she has been lied to for 16 years. Yeah. And that's where that comes out. Where like, he killed my mom and he never told me, you know, like, and
he knew that I thought that May killed my mom, and he didn't say no. He just let me hate my sister forever, you know? And so in that moment,
he just did it to protect me, you know?
Right.
Like,
so in that moment, you know, she made the rash decision of killing him. But and you know, I'm glad that you mentioned it, that like May had this much time to think about it, because when she says like, you killed my mother, and Soul pauses and he just says like, yes, I did. You know, May actually looked like kind of resolved in that moment. She's like I don't know, she just kind of feels vindicated, you know, but in a way that made me think, if Osha wasn't there, would Soul still have died? You know? And then Osha hearing that for the first time and in a very vulnerable position, you know, can't handle it. And you know, Soul did try to explain himself, but you know, she began choking him. And the last thing that he says is, "It's okay." And I don't know what that means. I'm wondering if he's saying that it's okay, you can kill me, you know? Because I think a part of the thing, like, yeah, Soul didn't explain himself well, and I think it's because he was so riddled with guilt constantly because of his upbringing as a Jedi that he himself does not believe he's worthy of forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know? And so he finds it hard to explain to himself because he never worked that through on his own. And so now that he is called to explain this action, he doesn't know how, and it's far too late by that time.
Yeah.
And so that is like kind of tragically beautiful in that way. I think like, yeah, he could have explained it better, and that's the point. He could have.
Maybe that's the point. Yeah.
And
it's honestly another Marvel moment. It feels like the evil duality of when Scarlet Witch kills Vision in Infinity War, and he's like, it's okay, you know, like that's that moment where it's like, it's not like, you know, you have to do this, but it's like, maybe I think it's a way of him, because he believes he deserves this, but also he cares more about Osha's approval, or like, you know, her being okay, feeling that she might need to do this, rather than him being like, please don't do this, you know, like, you know.
It's so terrible. I hate that Soul, who is a character I've come to really care about now. The last thing that he essentially says, he like gives her consent to murder him because he cannot get over this guilt. And it's because of the way of the Jedi. Like, again, I mean, now I really get it when they were talking about that this kind of highlights the problem with the Jedi, is that their dogma and their way of doing things made him feel so bad for, you know, doing this action. Now, yes, it was a terrible action, but if he simply knew how to talk things through and speak through his emotions, he would have been able to explain. In the moment, I did what I thought was right because I thought she was going to hurt. I thought she was going to hurt May. You know, yeah, it was an act of protection. I don't think he deserves death from that, but I think that what he did do wrong was not talk things through and you know, conceal this act. Right, because how are you supposed to talk about that in an order that, you know, essentially will exile you completely if you even say so much as I'm having doubts, you know? So
or
I completely
even if they
understand that.
won't exile, I mean, which later on they do, like we see with Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, or she doesn't get exiled, she chooses to leave, but still, like, they've been sipping on their Kool-Aid for so long that he thinks, like, it's one of those things where things have been going so well, and then like a bad thing happens and you're so afraid of what will happen. Like, it's the same thing of what Anakin went through, of like, he was so afraid to tell people about him and Padme, when in the end it would have been okay. Like, he just, but when you're in that position, you're like, it's the end. Like, to some people, they don't learn that lesson for a long time, that it's like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. Like, they're gonna like excommunicate me. I'll never be a Jedi. Like, I'll be a failure. And it's like, had he told the Jedi, he would have been okay. Soul would have been okay. Would he have been a Jedi anymore? Maybe not, but he would have been okay.
And it was out of fear. It was out of fear that the Jedi would have sent Osha away, you know, which is what he didn't want. And it's because he wanted to protect her, you know?
Oh my God. Sorry, I can't listen. I can't say anything, but and now it's kind of clicking for me. My Last of Us fans, you know. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's the selfishness of like, and I do wish, and I maybe on another watch, I really want to know like what, like I would love to get a little bit. I wish we had gotten more of Soul pre-Brindock to figure out like, did he have a desire to train a Padawan, and like then he like kind of like we see that he latches on to Osha really quickly, right? Both May and Osha, but specifically Osha. But we don't get a whole lot of time of like seeing his desires of like, you know, I really would like him wanting, I guess that, I mean, in actuality, it's really like a daughter is what he wants, you know? Because even after she leaves, he still kind of views her in that way. That's a very slight criticism. Maybe on rewatch it will click a little bit better, but I can still kind of piece together the that moment in my mind, because I think a lot of it does come down to, at least from May's point of view, that he very selfishly clung on to him being the hero, and then that kind of transpired the snowball of all the bad things that happened. But it did at least start from a good thing. It just didn't exactly pan out that way, you know?
Well, it was similar to Anakin, like wanting to protect those he cares about, you know? But I think if it were in a situation where he were in an order where they encourage, caring about people, or like wanting to protect people that you love, then it would have felt less like something that you absolutely have to do, you know what I mean? Because if you bottle up those emotions, then when you act upon them, it is impulsive and it's not based on thought.
Yeah.
It's based off of like action. So yeah, I think that this really did highlight a lot of those problems with the Jedi Order, which what the senator, I believe, said to
Senator Rayencourt.
Yeah, which it looked like he had the Crimson Dawn necklace too.
I saw that too, and I was like, "What's going on with that?"
It looked very similar to the kind of variant that Jar Jar wears as Senator.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And which made me think about that just a little bit. But he essentially says something along the lines of, if one of you,
it's only a matter before one of you guys snap, and then who will be able to stop you,
and who will be.
Luke Skywalker,
he says who will be able to stop him, which is funny.
Oh, him,
which is funny. I half expected Vanestra to just go like, or her, or them.
Yeah. We don't know for sure.
Maybe.
But basically, that was a really good moment where I wish we would have gotten maybe that moment. I don't know. I really like that scene upon rewatch, and I almost wish we would have gotten a little bit more moments of Vernestra having the pressure of the Senate on her, because it's set up really early on, but we don't exactly see it. We really don't get a her with the Senate until episode 6, but still. That moment was really good because he's the only one. He's like, I don't trust you guys. You guys are unchecked power, posing as religion, and you guys are all about hope and peace and light. But eventually, one of you guys are going to be able to control your emotions, and you're going to snap, and you're not going to be able to stop him.
I got Sith vibes from him.
Yeah, everybody thought he was playing, who, Voldemort. No.
Well, it would be interesting if, like, in season 2, which I'm gonna speak of it as if it has been greenlit. Just because it's easier for my brain.
Through this discussion, I'm on the season 2 Kool-Aid right now. Like,
I think it would just be like, I want to see more of that guy, because I actually think it would be interesting if he was, another op. And so
with the direction of where this season left off, with what I would presume, we'll get into it in a little bit, of if there is going to be a second season, Vernestra and Chimere's dynamic being a very prevalent part of the season. Like, it literally is like, okay, Sol, Osha, and May, that was kind of the dynamic. Now that's kind of resolved. So now it's Vernestra and what we learn about that he basically was her apprentice. I could totally see Rayencourt or other senators being more involved in the season, which would be very cool and could possibly lead, years and years down the line, if it's maybe it's a 3-season show, eventually setting up Palpatine,
Sith influence within the Senate.
I
got very
distrust.
Yeah, I got Sith vibes from him. I think specifically because he had referenced the Jedi attempting to control the uncontrollable, or like control what they shouldn't, know. And Vernestra thinks that he's talking about like the common people or something like that, and he's talking about emotions. And I'm like, that's a very Sith thing to say. Very interesting. While you wear the somewhat Crimson Dawn necklace and wearing red and gold,
We know how in the book Plagueis manipulates a lot of senators, and not just Palpatine.
Yes.
That guy is right in place for those seeds that he planted, is all I'll say.
I'm just going to say I think he could be an op. He might be a plant.
If he's not now, he certainly will be later on.
Yes, I think he... And you know what? Let's just go ahead and talk about it. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Darth Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis
Supposedly.
Is... It sounds like the Scrappy-Doo killed in Miami sort of thing. Darth Plagueis is hiding in a cave.
Yeah, he lurking. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and confess. When that moment happened, I went, what? I was like, he's just in the cave, just watching, and I was like, so he's been there the whole time, and I was like, that's weird. Admittedly, if we don't get a season 2, this scene will frustrate me because then it feels a little fan servicey in a way, or like there he is, guys. But if I almost wish this scene was at the end of the episode and not the beginning of like when Chimere and Osha are holding hands. I almost wish it was him like watching them, and that would have been like, I think that would have hit harder for me. But still, it's a cool.
I agree, but at the same time, that coming, because like you and I, and probably a lot of Star Wars fans at this point, like with film and TV, we expect there to be like the big reveal at the very end. And so for it to come up out of nowhere, like I felt like I got slapped in the face. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like I literally had to, I said that and I paused and I rewound and I was like,
you're like,
right now?
DiCaprio meme.
Exactly. So yeah, I think, I'm also very confused. I don't know what he's doing there. And now there's more questions. It's like, does Chimere know that he's there? And like when I heard someone say, does Chimere know that he's there? And I thought to myself, of course he knows that he's there. How could they just randomly be there at the same time? And then I thought to myself, wait a second. What if Plagueis is following them? Like he heard about this. Chimere is not Baneline. Like, and Plagueis is, because that would explain why, like, he's, like, lurking behind a cave, because he doesn't want to be found.
Right.
You know? So what if he is hiding from them?
I mean, there was a whole series of chapters of when he's taking out force user, force cult imposters, you know?
Yeah. So, and we both know that, like, if they're trying to stay true to the character, Plagueis is not hiding out in a cave 24/7. So
that would be very out of character for Plagueis, especially 100 years before the Phantom Menace. Now, maybe closer to Phantom Menace Plagueis for sure, but not right now.
He's got a lot of setup that he needs doing, and given his look, he's on mission, I think. So I believe I have a feeling that he is actually, that they don't know that he's there. That Chimere doesn't know that he's there. I think Chimere is kind of like a Sith aspirant. I think he's just saying, you know, like, or I mean, maybe Plagueis found him or Tenebris found him and then cast him aside, right? But I don't believe that him and Chimere are working together.
I mean, he never calls himself Darth. We know, again, from this episode, you don't have to be Sith to bleed a crystal. You can, and we know that from
he said that he was a Sith, but
he said some of you may call me Sith, you know, but that doesn't guarantee, like, and I think eventually, like, I mean, they don't have to. This could be an off-screen thing, but I feel like now that he is training Osha, which is also an interesting thing because, well, Palpatine in the book did train Maul. He trained him for a long time without Plagueis knowing. So if he was in cahoots with or serving Plagueis, it would be certainly interesting if Plagueis was like, yeah, you can train her like that early on, you know, that would be weird.
Yeah.
Red flags.
It's really hard to say because we don't know what planet they're on, you know.
Yeah. I think it's gotta be Baldimnik. It's the Cortosis planet, you know.
I mean, yeah, it would be, that would make sense. And then also he did tell Osha that he wants the power of 2, you know, so that either means that he is on his own or he has been tasked by Plagueis to like kind of have someone with him, you know, like as like a Sith assassin, or he's trying to get someone to overthrow Plagueis, and he thinks Plagueis doesn't know, but of course Plagueis knows.
Right. And this story could go a lot of different ways because of that.
Yeah, because all we've seen is Plagueis kind of like lurking behind a corner. And I gotta say, I have never seen something that looked so evil in Star Wars than Plagueis did in that scene.
Yeah.
And
malicious.
I'm calling him Plagueis because one, like he looks like a mun, you know.
Yeah. A moon man.
He looks like a moon man. And also.
Plagueis.
And also, shout out to Ashton Sherritt. I'm sure he caught this as well, and I'm not saying sure because him and I already spoke about it. It plays essentially the same tones as Palpatine's teachings when he's talking about Plagueis, when you see Plagueis in that scene.
I didn't even pick up on that, dude.
It has the same operatic growl. It's just, it's a bit more atonal and less formed together, and I really want to see Ashton talk about it. I know you're listening to us, buddy.
Dude.
So that is absolutely there. And that's all we see of him. They don't talk about it ever in the rest of the episode, which I hate how that is intentional. Yeah. I hate that they show us that before the halfway point in the episode and then never mention it. And I just think that it just makes me go, talk to me.
Yeah.
Communicate, you know?
I like, for me, it's a toss-up thing where I'm like, I like that it's intentional, but I'm like, you know, like,
I hate it, and not in a way that it makes me dislike the show. It's just
right.
I want more. So then there has to be a reason as to why they're showing it to us now. And I guess my only thought is they wanted us to see that, and then now imagine that he is now in the background of this with the rest of the episode. Like, because now every bit of information that is presented to us post seeing Plagueis is now added to this information that Plagueis is in the background watching or is aware of what is happening. So
that brings up the question, which you might be thinking the same thing, kind of what we called earlier on. Do you think he had any involvement in the alteration or the split or the creation or whatever it may be of May and Osha? Because I would say there's like a 20% chance that he did.
I think I'm agreeing with that.
Or at the very least, he knows about it, and maybe he did. He was not part of it, but he is very interested in, like, it might be a thing that Chimere is working with him, is the apprentice, and he's like, bring me one of them, you know, bring me one of them, make them strong enough in the dark side because I can study them for my own doing, you know?
Yeah. So it's really hard to say. I will say that you and I were pretty much right on the money that, like, he is connected with this, because how could he not be? Again, like, wake up, Gotham. Like, this is, people were going like, you know, it's taken away from Plagueis, and earlier you and I were like, of course it's connected to Plagueis.
Yeah.
So whether or not he is using this as inspiration, or this is one of his experiments, because that wouldn't surprise me at all. I'm not sure. He would have absolutely felt the dark side vergence. So I wouldn't be surprised if him and Tenebris, likely at that time, were either involved with the vergence or immediately investigated upon its appearance.
I mean, immediately it comes down to the back to what we said earlier about the who taught us that rhyme thing, you know, like, which felt very intentional, and it was like, you would have known if it was your mom who taught you it, you know? And it's like, is this like some instilled, because again, we don't get the answer on like them being the same person, but we know from episode 7 and 8 that they were only able to be created because of the vergence on the planet. And as far as they know, it was Anastasia, but it's not ever quite clear, you know?
It's not clear. We also don't know how the stranger found May. We don't know like what that was like. So I don't know. Like, I think it's at this point he is connected, whether it means that he was a part of it or not. He is watching. He is observing the results. And I think that is what is important, and it feels very in character with Plagueis. Yeah. So yeah, I have to see what happens. I got to see a season 2. They got to tell me now.
Yeah. And I know there's already a ton of people that are like, don't even let him touch Plagueis, gonna ruin it, whatever. I'm like, I don't agree. Because as far as I feel with this show, and I have more thoughts, but I'll just like go and say like I enjoyed more than I had criticisms with. I will say, I'll just go and get this out of the way. I do hope if they do a season 2, I only ask for a few little asks. All right. A little bit of a budget increase if we're going to be telling this story. Not much, just a little bit. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more episodes. I'm a big 10 to 12 episode kind of guy. Give me that Andor.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. It's like, and even if those episodes are a little bit shorter, a little bit more spliced out, but I mean, Andor really spoiled us with the 12 episode format, the little mini arcs. I think that could really serve this story well. Yeah. I also think, Dave with his new position, I would love to, not for him to be like super involved because he's busy with his movie and the Mando movie and everything, but I would love to see him be a little bit more involved because we're getting closer to bigger scale, bigger stake Star Wars stuff that I think he is, if anyone is, that's not George Lucas, he is capable. And guys, this is just a me thing and a big thing. Can we make those lightsabers smaller, please? Thank you. Like,
those are some big boys.
I was like, listen, lightsabers change in between movies. By the way, apologies if you can hear my dog barking in the background. I don't know how this will affect it in post. He is barking his head off right now because of the mailman. There you go.
Actually, but I would just there was something I wanted to on top of that. If they handle Plagueis like if they continue going forward with Plagueis in season 2, I am, at the very least, glad that they are being super, super careful with him right now. Yeah. No name drops, literally just a reveal. Don't even see his whole face, right? Yeah. I think that despite some writing decisions, feeling a little too fast or maybe a little too forced, I think I'm glad that they took great care not to do anything crazy with him in this season just yet.
Yeah. There was, I saw a post earlier today, even regarding that, and I try not to get too much into the discourse, but someone basically being like, oh, they're going to ruin Plagueis or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, they've ruined Plagueis by putting him in for 4 seconds as like this shameless plug to bring in audiences and get greenlit for a second season, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, while maybe that might be true, again, they clearly wrote this with the intention of they wanting to be a second season, and they wouldn't have put Plagueis in there without the full intention of, if there is a season 2, we want Plagueis in it. It is a tee up for that, And I'm like, also, nothing about Plagueis has been ruined because, one, the Plagueis book still exists, and hey, even when Plagueis' story is told further in canon, I will still love the Legends Plagueis book, dude, and I would still go out of my way to read it again because it's that good. You can isolate them, and they can be two different entities, and you can still enjoy whichever one you like.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, I mean, are there already people saying that like Plagueis is ruined because of a 4-second shot?
Oh, yeah. He's ruined, or he's gonna be ruined, or it's a shameless plug, or whatever. It's like it's a way to for them to make a season 2 and it's gonna suck and blah blah blah. And I'm like,
so it makes me think of that SpongeBob meme where it's a kid that's crying in the car with his dad, and the kid's got ice cream, and it's like, I didn't want ice cream or whatever, and the dad's like, then why did you ask for it? It's like, it's literally that situation where people are like, we want to see Plagueis, and then it's like, you ruined Plagueis. Well, why did you ask for it?
Right.
So I'll just be straight. People are going to be mad regardless of whatever happens. So I don't care. That's it. End of story.
Yeah. And I think now, like, I'll be honest, the storyline. They didn't do anything
with him. How can you be mad about it?
I was like, he literally is there standing in a cave, and as far as I know, that adds up with his character.
What? He didn't stand in a cave in Darth Plagueis? Of course he did.
It's not like the opening of the book. He's simmering in a cave over his dead body, or the dead body of his master, the master of his dead body.
Palpatine?
Palpatine, I guess. You think Palpatine kept Plagueis' body in Legends?
I strongly doubt it. What was it? I think he said something like in the book, it's like the HoloNet, like the death of Hago Damask was like a footnote on the HoloNet or something like that. Whereas his ascension to chancellorship was something that was on the front page, basically.
I mean, but even as chancellor, he probably could have been like, Coroner, could you please transfer the body of Hago Damask to my safekeeping? We would like to honor him properly with the banking clan, whatever. Like, Palpatine could do his... Not that I think he would... Well, in canon, he might want his body for Rise of Skywalker reasons.
Yeah.
But that was just an interesting theory that I had.
Man, I'm just gonna, one of my favorite parts about that book is that Palpatine, when Plagueis dies, Palpatine actually doesn't know if Plagueis managed to survive or not. Mm-hmm. And I think that is just really great. I love unanswered questions because, I don't know, potentially just the idea of Palpatine not being 100% sure if Plagueis is really dead, like if his spirit went somewhere else because he didn't tell Palpatine about something. The opening of that book is so good. Yeah, I just think it's really, really good because I don't know, even Palpatine was like, man, I don't know. He could have. He was powerful. He didn't tell me stuff, so I don't know. I just think that's really cool. So
yeah. Hey, I'll go ahead and give a shameless plug here as well while we're on the topic. We actually, for the debut of our book club podcast earlier this year, it was late last year and early this year, we did 3 streams that broke up the Plagueis book. If you want to read it yourself and you want to hear our discussion and feedback, because we got into a lot of really heavy hitting topics in that series. One of my proudest things to work with it was us, Will, Tony, Star Wars Sith, and Beyond the Dune Sea, Connor and Seth. We all collaborated. So now, if you're interested in the book or just want to hear our discussion about it, there's 3 episodes of that you can go listen to on any one of our channels. If you go to the live tab, it was a series of live streams we did. So
really check that out. Tales from the Archives. All of the people in this group is really, really great, and I know that y'all are listening right now. I love you guys. But there was something I was gonna mention. Of course, people know about the name of Darth Plagueis, right? But there will be people like how there was a lot of new age Star Wars fans where their entry was Mando, Yep. And so there are going to be some people that watch the Acolyte and they're like, "Who is that?" And so they'll look it up, and this will lead them potentially to the Plagueis book and to other stories. And I just think that that's really great because it just reminds me of just how vast and interconnected Star Wars is. Yeah. That this will take some people down a rabbit hole, or this will bring people to a point that knew about Plagueis that they're like, you know what, I think I really want to read this book now. Just because I have to know more about him, so it makes me happy.
Here's the thing. If Acolyte was not your thing and you're like, I don't care about what they do with Plagueis, the best thing is almost everything that's in the Plagueis book still fits into canon, While it doesn't directly reference the High Republic or anything, for the most part, we read that book and we're like, very little is Legends content. I think really the only thing is it like Bon Topalo, the king of Naboo? That's kind of a weird retcon thing where I don't remember in canon if they've ever had a king before. I think it was only a line of queens. Could be wrong about that. And then the connection to the bounty hunter game with Kamari Vosa and
the Shadowhunter book.
Yes,
too.
Yeah. And it connects to the Heir to the Empire book. But it's very little.
It's loose canon.
Very loose, irrelevant stuff that doesn't matter. The Plagueis book is if, at least in our reading experience, if there was one you had to read and you're excited about the setup of this character or just interested at all, go read that book. Especially if you're an audiobook person, the audiobook is fantastic as well. It's the must read, if there was one you had to read, it's that one. And it's a dope story, man. It
is. It's the equivalent of going into the Jedi archives and even though they wouldn't have that there, but it's the equivalent of just, you see Plagueis, you're like, I want to know more about this guy. And it's okay, well, here's a tale about him. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Here you go. Read all about it, the information here is tentative, but this is what we know. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And you're reading and you're it's some people say it's this way, some people say it's that way,
It's an old Sith legend, the information's tentative, but this is what we know about this person. Whether or not that holds true is up to interpretation, but Yeah.
In the Book of the Sith, which is Legends, but still, Luke talks about Plagueis, and even he is in the thing, is like, all we know, like, there's rumors that he was still alive when the Jedi found my father, but we don't know for sure. Or there's still that when Palpatine became Chancellor of the Republic, that there was rumors that he was still alive very close to that point, but nothing is confirmed. You know, like we still don't, because they never found out that it was Hago Damask. You know, and I'm like, dude, that's so cool, and that still works within the little intricacies of dude. I just want to say, I'm glad, like, I'm very happy, like, with this whole discussion that we've had, because one of the, I say this all the time, one of the biggest things of why we started Mortis is because we would have these discussions of where the very beginning of this, you were like, man, I really liked it. You know, I had a couple problems, but like, I really liked it overall. Whereas I had more of a big mixed bag thing. And that often happens. It'll flip vice versa, depending on certain things, where I'll like a thing and you may not like a thing as much. And and one of the big reasons why we started Mortis was because we would have these conversations and then end up bringing a positive light to things and being like, oh, I really like that, you know, of like, oh, Mando season 3 is like, continues the tale of Din being a kingmaker. And you're like, oh, I really like that. Like, that was kind of the inspiration of like, we should share this with people. And so coming out of Acolyte episode 8, I wasn't like super like, yeah, that was awesome. I was kind of like, all right, there were some things I like. Now with our discussion, I'm like, dude, I think this has bumped it up for me. I mean, I still have my critiques for sure, but I'm like, I mean, I was going into the beginning of this episode being like, like a 6 out of 10. And now I'm kind of like 7.5 out of 10, you know, like I still like, I'm excited to go back and watch this from cover to cover with everything that we have discussed and really analyzing Soul's character and even May and Osha and the context of what happened on Brindok going into the beginning episodes, you know? So I hope that people listening can feel that same way. I mean, we've all obviously, like with last week, we were definitely we were more harsh, but without trying to be hateful. But at the end of the day, we do try to like redirect after a project has completed, at least part of a project, to be like, okay, what are our thoughts? How does this make us love Star Wars more, kind of thing?
Well, I think a constant with Mortis FM is that, and something that we had made very intentional upon the creation of the show, is that there's always something positive that you can take out of something that's more negative in your eyes, right? So like there's always a silver lining, like a little bit of something that just makes it better than what you thought it was. And of course, like we aren't trying to make something artificially good,
right?
I wouldn't even say that we were harsh for the last episode. I would just say that we were honest and critical. You know, there was things that, you know, was just kind of a little bit of a slip, but and yeah, even I agree that there was stuff about this episode that, you know, was a bit of a mixed bag, and I had already brought that stuff up, but it didn't shake my perception of the show or the episode to a point where I was unsatisfied. And so I still feel good about it. I don't think it was like an amazing show, but I mean, it's good Star Wars. I really enjoyed it. There's parts of it that, you know, we kind of say this about a little bit of every project, is like there's parts of it that I absolutely adore. That's like some of the best in Star Wars. And then there's parts of it that's like, okay.
I mean,
you know,
I mean, I'm so glad, like, it's still my favorite episode of the show was episode 5, and I'm so glad we got to watch that together.
Yeah, we were screaming. Like, we were screaming.
We were like, you know,
oh my god, yeah, that's a highlight Star Wars moment. Like I think you and I kind of have like a highlight reel of our best Star Wars moments together, and that's absolutely one of them. So I'm thankful that the Acolyte gave us that.
Oh yeah, and like just being able to talk about the stuff, like I mean, up there with like being able to watch, you know, Kenobi v Vader again, and Kenobi was like in that discussion of us being like, oh my gosh, or like you know, even again we've been critical of Book of Boba Fett, of that being our kind of our least favorite Star Wars project, but like when Mando showed up again, I was like,
or you know, like Luke training Grogu, you know, that was great stuff, and like us watching Boba ride the Rancor, you know, that was and like the shootout with Cad Bane, like awesome stuff. So like there is a silver lining that you can find. It's always better to think positively about something than negatively. Now of course, like don't you know, like the Jedi, like don't shy away from those bad emotions. It's good to process them, but It's better to think in a positive light. And actually,
if you focus on the negative, I'm gonna steal a note out of Qui-Gon's book and technically Will's book, because he is always saying this of like, your focus determines your reality. If you focus on the negative, your reality of Star Wars is going to be super, and that goes with everything, not just Star Wars.
All it's going to be. Like, it's all about the mindset.
Yeah.
And actually, I will bring up a part of the episode that I thought was really interesting to me.
Okay.
Is that there was a strange, I think it's because of the perspective of, the quote unquote narrator, right? Like when we're following Osha and May's perspective, especially post Soul, that there's like a strange beauty about being with Chimere, being with the stranger, like kind of accepting these Sith values. Yeah. Like in episode 6, when Osha's like kind of following Chimere around, beautiful score. The planet that they're on is beautiful. Like just the concept of accepting who you are and these emotions, like it is presented to us like it is a good thing. And then especially when they're in the glade in this episode with May and Osha and Chimere by the tree, Yeah. And even though Chimere, the stranger, is this imposing,
he's got this mask on and everything,
very evil individual, it's presented like the scene itself is beautiful. Like he just kind of says, I could attempt to wipe her memory of us.
In like a kind gesture,
It feels kind. It feels like she's going on her hero's journey or something like that. Right. It feels like an admirable sacrifice. When in actual, and I think that's because it's presented to us like, because Osha feels like this is the right thing. So it feels like a good thing is happening here. I really like a ton
of all these Marvel references, but that moment really made me think of No Way Home.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, it's the moment of like Peter being, like, you'll forget who I am sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's this noble gesture because in that movie it is, but in this it's the stranger being like, because Osha is like, I'll train with you,
like what do you want, Osha?
Yeah, and it's like it's this really sweet moment, and of course May is the one to kind of give the nod of approval to wipe the mind. But it's still like, when you think about it, it was kind of a way that she was manipulated into this position of like, I'll train with you if you protect her, and he's like, I can wipe her mind, and whether that will stay there forever, who knows? But
well, in Corrupt and Teach, or Teach and Corrupt, episode 6, like, as I said when we were talking about that episode, Soul and May in that ship, it's treated as dark and sterile, and it feels more sinister. But with Osha and the stranger, it feels like a beautiful acceptance of the self, and so it's
even down to the final, like one of the final shots of the episode in this one where he's holding her hand as the sun is setting,
Like, it feels like it's presented to us as a triumph. Yeah. Which we know that we know that it's not right. But it's presented to us like it is. And I think that is really great because it shows to us from the Sith perspective that this is a good thing. I just think that's really special. So I like the way that that's being shown to us. Like in opposition to, like, let's say Revenge of the Sith, when Vader is anointed, essentially, like, it is so evil. Like it's literally a deal with the devil. Yeah, deal with the devil sort of thing. Whereas with Osha and Chimere, it's like we're helping one another on this journey together. And it so what if it's steeped in darkness? It's still right. It's still what I was meant to be. And so that begs the question of like, how is this going to continue in season 2, right? I
kind of have a hope for what will happen with Chimere and Osha. And honestly, like, I think this would be some really cool stuff to explore because the EU really delved into a lot of, we've seen Jedi relationships, right? We've seen Kanan and even Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme and stuff. I would love to see, now we don't know the relationship again between Chimere and Plagueis, if there is one at all currently, but I mean, it's Leslie Headland intentionally, like we said last week, set this up as if the dark side was kind of seductive in this way.
Yeah.
And it seems like Osha is almost like kind of falling for Chimere in a way. And I mean, even down to, again, they're holding hands and she's okay with it, you know? Like, or they make a very clear point in the recap of what happened in the beginning of the episode of like when she has the lightsaber to his throat, there's like a line that is said that's not what she's actually saying. It's kind of like a voiceover when Chimere, it puts his hand on her wrist, you know? And I'm like, I personally would love to see this like weird dark side love story in a way. I think that would be incredibly interesting. And I think that is what they are setting up and would be earned, in my opinion.
Well, as Chimere suggests, he is seeking the power of two, you know, and maybe he means more than just like a master and an apprentice. And yet, we all know that this is a dark path, and as the show reminds us, the shadow on the wall, aka Darth Plagueis, who is like, again, the most evil thing I've ever seen in Star Wars, period, is there, lurking in the shadows. And so the show reminds us like, hey, we know that this looks pretty. I just want to let you know, this is what that will lead to.
And you get that feeling that he's watching them even as this moment is happening. You don't see him, you know?
But you know, that, and that's why I'm glad that they actually didn't have him at the end, because showing him at the beginning of the episode, it puts him in our minds for the rest of the episode.
I can't wait to go back and watch it with that lens in mind, especially just with Chimere and all of that stuff. Like, and this is also going to be my bold take. I mean, it really depends on where it goes, but I really do think, depending on how it happens in season 2, Chimere is probably going to be my favorite Sith. He is right now. He is so interesting to me, even though we don't know a whole lot.
I agree. He's so cool, man.
I
love his voice. I love his outfit. His fighting style.
He talks, even in this episode. I'm like, that helmet is like my favorite Star Wars helmet ever. Like the modulator to the. Also, by the way, speaking of the helmet, there's a part in the fight where he changed, he's holding the blade against Souls and then brings it, and he's like bringing the blade to his helmet in an attempt to try to short it out, and you're seeing the sparks hit the helmet, and it's like shorting out the sparks.
I'm like, cool.
That is a sick moment in the fight, dude.
And here's the thing, I really want there to be a season 2 because I loved this season, but given where it has taken us, it's only just now getting good. Because I want to see Sith training, because like that stuff, I want you to show me the antithesis to Luke and Yoda on Dagobah. I want to see the inverse of that. And I have to see more, because this idea is really, really good. Initially, I was a little bit like, I kind of wish that it was a one and done sort of thing. But now that they left it off in such a way, I want to see more of this story. And I really hope that they entertain that.
If Chimere is going to be training Osha, that would also be equally as interesting, because I read Dark Disciple, and it does some things really cool. I think one of the cool things is kind of having that, like, this, they're teaching one another, but it is a love story sort of thing. But this is like full dark side. And so if Chimere is training Osha, but they are also training as Sith, and they're in a relationship, would be super interesting. Because again, we know in like EU and Legends, like, you know, with Rev and other people, like people fell in love, and Sith had wives and things like that, you know?
Yeah.
At least the Sith of old. And I don't want it to get too like campy, but I do think what they have set up so far is cool. And I just think seeing, like, we've seen all these really nice and happy relationships, especially with Jedi. I mean, one even in the High Republic books is Elzar and Avar, both Jedi that fall in love, you know? And I don't know, this having a dark side to it, and that might even lead to Plagueis being like, you've fallen in love too far.
This is what I was gonna say, okay? Like, because of this bond between the stranger and Osha, I am now of the opinion that Plagueis is not allied with the stranger. I do not think that he is. I think he's hiding in the cave for a reason. I think it's because he's tracking them. I think he became aware of this vergence and the operation. He's probably been watching May and Osha for a while, and then is now aware of, oh, stuff's going down, and then ended up following, the stranger to this location. I'm not 100% on it, but that's what I'm ascribing to. But I think that this bond between the stranger and Osha is actually going to become their undoing. This is going to be a rift between them via Plagueis, because he's going to attempt to take one of them. He's probably going to try and take Osha. He might have to. He might end up attempting to have Osha kill the stranger.
Yeah, whoever comes out on top, I'll train. And it probably will end up being a thing where neither of them do. And he's like, all right, well, because obviously he's gonna have to go find another apprentice eventually. He's going to have to find a way to create life on his own because this one failed. So I don't know. And also, May is still in the picture. May is still going to, Venestra is still trying to use May to find Osha. And to try to find Chimere. Yeah. Which we haven't even talked about that yet.
It's kind of crazy that ended up being true, because when you told me that in our last episode, I was like, what?
Really?
Yeah, no, I mean, it felt so unlikely to me, because I was like, why would Vernestra do that to him? Because it's not very Jedi-like. But
she's not acting very Jedi-like at the end. She's goofing, dude.
She's goofing, she's gaffing. She hit and she sullied Soul's at least moderately good name. Now the Jedi think that it was Soul that did all that.
She is doing a cover-up of a cover-up, dude. For her own ambition. I mean, she literally was framing Soul to protect her own hide, and I think this
to maintain the Jedi's position in politics, which is the problem, and who's she now seeking to for help? Let's just go ahead and talk about it. Yoda. What? Yoda is in the show very briefly. Yeah. It looks like a puppet.
It is. I do think it's the back of a puppet, because they probably were because they've never quite got the face right ever since ever. Yeah. Literally, it's so that's why they did CG. Yoda in the prequels, because that doesn't look so foreign, but in Empire, anyway, that moment intrigues me, because I'm like, what is she going to say to Yoda that Yoda won't already know? Or not that he won't already know, that he won't be able to see through her. Granted, he wasn't able to see through Anakin in the prequels, and there was a dark cloud over the Jedi, and maybe that's starting to rise, but I'm like, I have a hard time believing that if Vernestra is going to lie to Master Yoda, if at all, maybe she doesn't lie, but that would be, because again, Vernestra does not know that her former apprentice, assumedly Chimere, or we know it's Chimere, whatever his real name is. She doesn't know no Jedi ever found out there was a Sith around. Does not break canon, guys. Crazy. Well, Keanu Mooney never saw a Sith.
Soul never saw a Sith. Soul did, and he told no one, and he's dead. So, I think, what's interesting to me, I think Yoda would be able to see through that she could be lying, that she could be fibbing, or that, she's got contention in her mind. But I'm not sure he would be able to, suss out the details. I think he could, be curious about it. What I'm curious about is what she's going to him for help for.
Yeah.
I mean, is she just gonna straight up go, hey, I think my apprentice is still alive? Which, begs the question, really, what happened between them? What happened between them?
I would love to bring this up. Her track of Padawans is, I'll censor myself later. Dog, dude. Because, all right, so her first Padawan was when she was 16. She became a Jedi Knight when she was 16, okay?
She had a Padawan at 16?
16, 17, yeah. So she's like a Jedi prodigy. She becomes a Jedi Knight at 16, which I think is kind of the setup of having that chip on her shoulder. So there's a guy named Emery Kantaros. The name of her ship is named the Emery, or the Kantaros, sorry. And before she took him on as a Padawan, he did briefly fall to the dark, not fall like completely, but he did like go AWOL kind of thing on, they were stranded on this one planet. It was in a book I read, Test of Courage. But then she ends up, because he loses his master and he feels the need to, like the Nihil killed his master and he's like, they need to pay. We don't need to bring them to the Senate. We need to kill, like, I'm going to kill them, get a vengeance for my master. But then Vernestra puts him in his place and then comforts him. And then she ends up taking him as, he's like 13 or 14. Yeah. She ends up taking him as her Padawan. Now, I don't know what happens to Emery. Apparently some stuff happened in the books. I'm not going to spoil myself because I am slowly going through the High Republic books. But we do know later on with her bio on StarWars.com that later on she takes another apprentice, and that apprentice dies. So it's not Chimera, it's a girl. It's somebody that someone that's in the books, and that was kind of a spoiler for the books. But in the books currently, she's only like 18, I think. High Republic fans, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong. So that's two. I know what ever happens to Emery. Either he leaves the Jedi, or he dies, or something bad happens. So her track record of Padawans or apprentices ain't great.
Yeah.
if I'm being honest.
Yeah. So, oh man, I'm trying to. So like originally, I was under the impression that like, with the idea that this was done by Vernestra, like Chimere's scars on his back are from like the lightsaber whip, right? And originally I was like, did she abuse him? But now I'm under the impression, well, what if he turned? I mean, according to her, he turned to evil.
Phil, yeah.
And what if she just killed him and she thought that she killed him, and that was the wound from it? Maybe she struck him down, covered it up, and, thought to herself, I killed him, I struck him down, right? So then, like, how did he survive from that? Was it from anger? Or did Plagueis save him? I don't know. There's so many more questions now. And
I don't know if I'm frustrated. I don't think I'm frustrated with the writing. I do like that they're portraying them in this way. Do I? I don't know. It's tough. I hate seeing the Jedi this way, man. I hate it being, here's a scandal with Soul, and he killed their mom and took the kids and left one for dead and blah, blah, blah. And now that's all, that's all covered up by Vernestra, who has her own thing where she got into a skirmish with her Padawan who fell to the dark side and hurt him. And now she's covering up. I'm like, I don't like seeing the Jedi like this, man. Granted, I'm a Luke Skywalker, Kanan Jarrus type of Jedi guy. Like, they're pretty distant from the actual Prime Jedi. So it's like, I do not associate with them. All right. Like I just, it just sucks, man. You're like, dude, stop doing this, man.
It's hard to see them like this. And yet it's almost because you always knew that it was there. Because we've been presented with that since the original trilogy, basically. We're like, from Luke's perspective, it was pretty obvious that even the Jedi that survived, there were flaws. Yoda and Obi-Wan were straight up like, you gotta
kill him, man.
You gotta kill him. He's done. They gave up on him. You're not saving your friends. They're done. It's you're not gonna make it, sort of thing.
It was the same thing in Dark Disciple, which is a good moment in the book where they make a decision. The reason they get Quinlan and to find Ventress is because they're like, we have to kill Dooku. Yeah, they're like, we can't capture him. Whatever, he has to die. Yeah, and we're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, what? And still, there are good examples of Jedi, even in the bad ones. Like, yes, Soul did bad things, but I still think he was a great Jedi for what he aspired to be.
And like, it's some of those things, you don't blame them. Like, I don't blame Soul for what he did, because based on his knowledge, he thought that May and Osha were going to be sacrificed. Yeah. Anastasia turned into this evil form, and he made a gut punch instinct, and he was wrong, and he had to face that. That happens a lot with Jedi making, like, they do good intentions, and it ends up being turning out wrong. But so far, I'm like, Vernestra, right now, things aren't looking good for you. You covered up everything.
Yeah.
Now, not only for the Senate, but also for yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I don't know how. I'm curious, High Republic people, if you're listening, how does that make you feel? Because Vernestra in the books is kind of like, she's kind of like Captain America. She's like, she's one of the good ones.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
it's rough.
Yeah, hundreds of years is a long time. Lots of time to make mistakes. So, I hope it's not a Thrawn situation where they didn't really consult Timothy Zahn about, the usage of his character when he was brought in, kind of thing.
They did.
There was something that had come out. I'm not sure if it was in Rebels or his usage in Ahsoka, where he didn't know about it, he didn't know that it was happening until after it was announced.
I think it might have been Tales of the Empire. Maybe I heard about that.
Regardless, I hope that Vernestra's creator is cool with this. But at the same time, if you sign a deal with Lucasfilm that, creating into their mythos, you're essentially opening your creations to be used in however way the execs see fit to be used for the story.
It's why me, as the Kanan purist I am, I'm like, I don't have to worry about it because he's dead. And he's never coming back.
And he's never coming back. Yeah, I mean, unless they come out with more Kanan side stories, right?
Yeah, but even then, that's as a kid. I don't think it affects anything as him as an adult. It's not like we'll have a situation where it's that's where I'm sitting over here going, I like Kanan.
I'm all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that there is. I think it's good though that you're seeing these things about the Jedi that you don't like, because it's good. It needs to be further understood where it all went wrong. How did we get to this place in the prequels where at the height of their powers, they allowed for the training and creation of Darth Vader? How did we get here? Right. I think it's good. So
a tear starts with a very small rip, and then it grows and grows, or on a windshield, a tiny little crack suddenly goes up the windshield over time, slowly and slowly.
Exactly. It really it takes one brick to fall to bring the whole house down.
Yep. Yeah.
So, regardless, I think in retrospect, I guess we could do an Acolyte retrospective, but I feel like this was pretty satisfactory for me.
If I have any huge revelations upon my rewatch of all 8 episodes, I will, and people maybe decide if they want one. It might be a brief one, but I think
1 year later.
Kind of thing. I was like, this one. I think I'm glad we kind of went very comprehensively into not just the finale, but the whole show. I do have a couple. I have 2 points that I think can be one we've kind of already covered, because Soul was kind of in disarray, and even Will brought this up. But I was kind of like, when he has when he has May locked up on the ship and she does escape using Pip, I'm like, dude, why didn't you take Pip? But I'm like, I get he probably didn't think about it because he's been in he's been in such a frenzy. But I'm like, brother, you just let her have Pip on her belt. But I get it. He's not thinking straight. He's in.
Soul was not doing well.
Yeah. Watched all of his friends die, then immediately dipped the planet, then knocked her out, and then went to Brendok, and he's just like. So.
Yeah. I also doubt that he was like, oh, she could use that little droid as a lockpick.
Yeah.
That felt very improvised.
Yeah.
On her end. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that I was kind of like, yeah, you probably could work that one out fine. But then the other thing is regarding Pip is at the end is when May's when May's mind is wiped, they take Pip. Now I don't know how Pip's droid models work, but Pip's mind was not wiped, or he was not taken. So I'm curious because they're trying to figure out what happened, how she did lose her memories, why she was at the tree, everything. Can they not, I mean, I'm going to assume because the writers will say so, and that's fine. No, like that, no. But I'm like, if he got reset earlier from like got the factory reset earlier in the show when May took him, I would assume like, and he had all the memories of being with Osha over the years. Can they not tap Pip for his memories?
Well, he would have the information of like practically he would have the information of the entire conversation with Osha and the stranger in the glade. So, I don't know.
I just don't know if it's a thing of like, oh, they pick up little traits and quirks because over time, but they don't like it might. I don't know. I was thinking, and I hate thinking of Star Wars like this because it's fantasy. But I'm like, is it a thing of like, does your phone like on your phone? Do you have to be clicking record for it to actually be recording everything, or does it just do it? You know, I don't know.
No, I think I want to say it depends on the chassis of the droid, but seemingly it looks like Pip has an actively recollecting database. And I recall the camera showing us that as they're escorting May inside to the chamber with Vernestra, they turn Pip off. I see that. So it's kind of like Chekhov's Pip, you know, like why would you show him in the shot? Why would you show them turning him off? You know, is that a way of saying, oh, the information was right under their noses and they didn't even notice? You know, like Pip gets confiscated and you never see him again, sort of thing. Like honestly, I don't know. It's another loose end that we'll just have to see if that's resolved or not.
I do hope they follow through with that because I think that is probably the biggest glaring could be the possibly biggest glaring hole in the story is to be like, oh yeah, he just, because I mean, Pip was there for everything that happened from when May got on the ship and swapped places to when she got to the Jedi Temple. I mean,
got it all in 4K.
So I'm like, maybe there's a thing going on where that's like, that droid doesn't do that. And that's fine if that's the case. I mean, it seems like Pip is kind of like a smartphone and a Swiss Army knife combined into one. So I don't know if, and it's also is 100 years prior to like, I mean, I think we do know that R2 Astromechs exists, but like, it's not that big of a droid, you know, it's a tiny little droid. So,
well, the R series, those mechs have been around for a long time.
Yeah, I was about to say,
what a company, you know?
Oh, dude, I'm thinking of like, I'm trying to think
just like
of
Astromechs in general. But yeah, as for Pip's capabilities, I really can't say. I do hope that they are aware of that, but it also, since they've made a point of like Pip's memory being erased, you know, like, I don't know. I think that that someone probably is aware of that on the writing team. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it'll be Basil. Basil will be like, we'll do the screenshot button and reset him again.
It'd be crazy if Basil was like an agent of Plagueis or something, and that's how, you know, like he's been tracking it the whole time. You know, because
it'd be so wild, dude.
It'd be wild. I'd be all right with it. You know, like just because he's a little goofy little alien guy, like it doesn't. I mean, like. And it's all because we saw him yanking those wires. He's just sus.
Yeah. That was the one thing that I'm like, what? Well, like between those two things, I do think we'll get answers. If we don't, I'll be a little bummed on those specific. I mean, I know we'll get answers on the overarching plot things, but yeah, that's all I got in terms of episode 8 and the show as a whole.
Yeah, currently. I think I covered it. I think I said everything I wanted to say. I think I covered all of my points that I wrote down in my mind.
My mental notes. Chat pack then?
Chat pack, I would say.
Let's do. Yeah, this one sounds good. All right. Ooh. Choose between these tough jobs: bartender in the Mos Eisley Cantina or server on Jabba's sail barge. Why did you pick that one? So basically, choose one to work and why.
Cantina. Because if you're serving in Jabba's palace, you're probably a slave.
Yeah.
And regardless, the sail barge explodes. So I'm not going to be on that.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. I was like, you're working for Jabba the Hutt, who is notorious of just killing people that work underneath him if you make him somewhat temperamental.
Yeah.
You're trapped on the sail barge. You can't just like hop off. I mean, you could hop off and you would just be in the desert and probably die.
Yeah.
The cantina, you're actually getting paid a wage. And while, yes, it's shady and kind of dodgy, like, they have rules and enforcement there.
It's shady and dodgy, but when they leave the cantina, they all go to Jabba's palace. That's when that, like, pretty much, that's where all of the shadiest and dodgiest go. You know, there's some, there's like a kind of reassuring 9 to 5 that comes with the idea of the cantina. But on the sail barge, you're probably a slave. You're probably going to get killed, and regardless, the barge is going to blow up. So, at the very least, if you don't die, you're not going to have any job security. So I would say Cantina 100%. And I can, mingle with Figure and Dan in the middle nodes. I get to listen to that.
Dude, the vibes. Play a sabacc game on the job or something, dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
like
we're Oga's frequenters. We're not Mos Eisley Cantina frequenters, but I mean, if the vibes are anything similar,
I mean, worst comes to worst, I gotta, mop up some Ponda Baba blood or just throw Greedo in the dumpster out back, right? But like, all I gotta say is like, no droids and just stuff like that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I was about to say, even if you were like someone held like you as a bartender at gunpoint, I think most people in the cantina love the cantina so much that they would think that person is like an op, and they would be like, don't point a gun at our bartender, all right? The
bartender's always sacred. If someone comes in and they insult the bartender, everybody's throwing them out.
You need to leave.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that one's pretty easy. I think it's funny when we get the easy questions.
Yeah, I think what was the last one that was also really easy? We were like, that one for sure. I don't even remember. Oh, look, I can pull it up real quick. Someone's already. It's Oh, it was the Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One. Why or why not? Like,
oh yeah, yes.
Duh.
George said so. Yeah.
Yeah. But then occasionally we get our keep an eye out next week for our special episode, where that was a chat pack question that devolved into an entire episode that is months long in the making, and you will finally see it next week.
Yeah. The production value in this one's crazy.
Yeah. We're actually, you thought flying the Falcon was crazy? Well, we made an entire Star Wars. No, I'm kidding.
We built the Millennium Falcon. It's like a Mr. Beast thumbnail. Yeah. I built the Millennium Falcon. Yeah.
Well, with that little anecdote at the end of what you can look forward to next week. Now that there's no Bad Batch and no Acolyte right now. We're going to be a little bit more in a Star Wars drought. We're going to be trying to find different ways to make content. I mean, we're going to keep doing episodes, try pretty consistently, but we're also going to try to find other ways for us to not just be a podcast. I already do a lot of I do some lightsaber stuff and reels and things, but possibly some gaming or some shorter form videos. We're brainstorming.
If you have any episode ideas, feel free to leave it down in the comments below or just shoot us a DM.
Yes, please.
We'll we're always open to ideas. But in the meantime, stay tuned for what's to come.
Yeah, I have an idea for a live stream that I might execute soon. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Cole, where can they find you?
You can find me at the.cosmic.drifter on Instagram, and you can find me at the Cosmic Drifter on YouTube.
Link in the description, wherever you're listening.
Grayson, where can they find us?
You can Mortis FM everywhere.
Oh, okay, got it.
I started speaking like Bill Clinton right there. I was like, Mortis FM.
Mortis FM.
Yeah, you can find me at Straight, but more importantly, you can follow us basically everywhere at Mortis FM. And hey, if you're here for the first time, or you've been listening for a while and you're not subscribed or following whatever platform you're on, feel free to do so. Spotify has comments now, by the way. Spotify podcast episodes now has a commenting feature. So if you're on Spotify, feel free to comment, I guess. Don't say anything too mean though, because people on YouTube are kind of mean to us.
Thanks everyone on YouTube for being really mean. We love your opinions because for unrelated reasons. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think that's everything. I'm pretty sure we covered it.
I believe so.
Acolyte, good. I like.
Yes.
Thank you.
No
Leslie.
Acolyte haters around here. We enjoyed it. Good job, guys.
Good job, guys.
May the force be with you, my friend.
Always.